With deer season approaching this Saturday, officials with the Department of Public Safety are urging motorists to drive with caution and watch out for deer on the highway. KTRE's Stephante Randall spoke to the sergeant with the Texas Highway Patrol about what they have seen recently and how drivers can be safe.
Officials with the Texas Department of Transportation say this is the time of the year when they see an increase in activity of deer-involved accidents. One of those wrecks happened Tuesday around 2:30 a.m. near Farm to Market Road 843 on Highway 69 when an 18-wheeler towing two trailers swerved to avoid a deer, causing the semi-truck to overturn and spill diesel on the roadway.
And that's really surprising because this is a well-populated area in this part of the county. A lot of times we see deer hits in rural areas, but we're seeing more and more in the populated areas. They'll come out from behind houses and across pastures and dart across the roadway.
Sergeant David Hendry is with the Texas Highway Patrol and says he has even seen deer in populated areas.
I've seen deer personally inside the city limits of Lufkin. So, I mean, just by knowing that, be mindful if you know you're on a trip, where you're going, you know, at what time that you're going, and knowing that, reduce your speed. Certainly wear your seatbelt. Use your high beams if possible when the weather conditions permit.
Most importantly, officials say it's the drivers who need to be vigilant and not distracted while driving.
We as motorists should be paying more attention to where we are. There are some signs posted on some of the roadways that say, you know, deer crossing. We need to keep in mind for those as well.
Stephante Randall, KTRE, East Texas News 9.
Now, TxDOT says this was the first deer-related accident this year involving an 18-wheeler.
I'm sure you have heard it, steer, don't veer. So if you see a deer, it's better to apply the brakes, but keep steering the wheel. Trooper Ben with the Kansas Highway Patrol says October is the start of when the most deer versus vehicle crashes happen. Usually it happens around sunrise and sunset. That's why he says drivers should be more cautious during those times.
Slow down a little bit, not panicky, and beep the horn at them. They'll scatter a lot of times if you beep the horn. And if there's one deer, there's usually more than one deer. There's usually two or three. A lot of times I've noticed the buck stands back and he lets the doe and the fawns go first, and then he follows after them. It's just because he's protecting the rear in case there's a predator or something behind him. But November's the worst month of the year, by far.
Right. And when it does happen so suddenly, let's say you don't see them come, but next thing you know, they're right in front of you. What do you do if you don't? You just drive through it.
You damage your car, but you're better off than swerving, hitting an oak or an elm tree, and flipping your car over into the side of the road. And it takes some focus to do that. So you have to have a strategy. This time of year when you're driving, they're nocturnal, dusk and dawn. You know, look, just plan on a deer running out from you. Don't let them take you by surprise. Plan on it.
And you have to be prepared to actually hit this animal.
You got to hit them.
Yeah. I mean, you have to actually consider that.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And actually drive through that animal.
A deer is more forgiving than an oak tree.
Yeah, that's for
and
sure.
when you go off the road braking hard and swerving, you're going to flip every time.
Okay. Randy Rand, thank you for joining us
You're
once
welcome,
again. Jungle Survival.
Deer crossing signs are up year-round. The risk is always there, but right now, the chance of seeing a deer crossing the road is much higher.
This time of year, the male deer, the bucks, they're active 24 hours. They're on the run constantly.
Fish and Game officials say during this peak mating season, the bucks are always on the move. So while you're driving your vehicle, make sure that's all you're doing.
Keep a lookout on sides of the roads. They're bound to come out in front of you day or night. So don't be distracted by cell phones, playing with the radio and stuff.
Slowing down can always help with reaction time.
Definitely watch your speed. You don't want a 200-pound animal coming through your windshield.
Just last night, Bartlett Police shared this photo of one of its officers with a deer that had been hit by a vehicle. They say it was okay, but a little disoriented and ended up wandering in the middle of the road, attracting a crowd of onlookers. Police moved the cars along and helped guide the young buck to safety. Officials say people should avoid wildlife and leave it to the professionals.
Let the authorities come and take care of the situation. Don't try to help them or hold them or anything like that. They're very scared of humans, obviously, and you don't want to put more pressure on them.
On the hunting side of things, deer season is in full swing right now. Opening day for rifle was just this past Wednesday. Officials want hunters to remember to wear those bright colors and just be extra careful while you're out there hunting. We're live in Bedford tonight. Siobhan Lopez, WMUR News 9.
And are urging drivers to watch out when they're on the road this month, October through December. It is deer mating season, which brings more of them to the road. And as the days get shorter, commuters' travel times tend to coincide with those of deer. Experts say you should never swerve to avoid hitting one because you could end up overcorrecting and flipping your car.
It is a reaction to try to swerve out of the way, but we've seen a lot of bad scenarios as a result of that. So, you know, it's unfortunate. It sounds terrible to say it, but it's better just to do your best to slam on brakes and slow down.
Georgia has a map online that you can use to determine peak times and deer movement. You can find that link on our website, WJBF.com.
Windshields shattered, bumpers ripped off, and it's all because more deer are on the roads. Collisions involving deer typically peak as we head deeper into the fall. Last year, PennDOT reported more than 4,300 deer-related crashes, and they can be expensive. According to AAA, the average insurance claim is around $3,500 for this. Channel 11's Joe Arena shows us how you can avoid paying more.
This is one here. This red car is one. The silver car is one.
Pretty much everywhere you look in Jeff Critchlow's body shop parking lot,
we have some we're currently working on.
There's a car that's been damaged because of a deer.
More busy now with hunting and rutting season starting. Once again, it never really stops anymore, but you see a tremendous increase these next couple months.
And Jeff says the damage varies. For instance, someone who's able to drive their car to Jeff's body shop is usually looking at $1,500 to $3,500 in damage. But for deer strikes like this one, it's a much different story.
This is, you know, a severe hit. They were obviously driving at a higher rate of speed, and this estimate has, you know, over $9,000 damage.
In fact, Jeff says if this SUV's airbag came out, the car probably would have been a total loss.
We just happen to live in a part of the country where there's more deer, and we have to act accordingly.
AAA spokesman Jim Garrity says it's never been more vital to take steps behind the wheel than during this time of year.
It's crucial to be paying attention to the road any time of the year, really, but this time of the year we just happen to deal with something that when you hit it, feels like hitting a brick wall.
And Jim says if you end up in Jeff's body shop, that doesn't mean you did something wrong. In fact, it makes more sense sometimes to hit a deer head on than trying to avoid the animal.
Sometimes you just have to be ready for as safe a collision as you can possibly have with the animal. And that might mean tapping the brakes slowly and only hitting it lightly, but what it shouldn't mean is swerving into the opposite lane.
And it's also a good idea to know your insurance. Typically, collision insurance doesn't cover deer strikes, but comprehensive does. And with all that pricey new technology on cars these days, making repairs more expensive, having the right insurance could save you a lot.
Vehicles are getting safer because they have new technologies going into them. Sensors in the bumpers, cameras behind the windshields, whatever. They're all in the name of making a vehicle a safer piece of equipment. But at the moment, they're more expensive to fix.
In Pittsburgh, Joe Arena, Channel 11 News.
Peak deer season in the tri-state, and no doubt you've seen dead deer laying on the side of the highway at some point. Well, one Warren County man whose wife was in an accident with a deer is wondering if deer whistles just might prevent it from happening again.
This amazing video from Michigan shows how quickly a deer can dart out in front of you.
Oh my God!
In this case, a snowmobile took out the animal.
Have you seen deer?
Oh yes, we have a lot of deer.
Closer to home, Jim McHugh says his wife recently hit a deer, causing more than $12,000 damage to her car here in Warren County.
1 minute she was driving, and the next there was a deer looking at her through the windshield.
So he decided to buy a set of deer whistles, sold at hardware and auto parts stores for as little as $10.
I don't really know if they really work.
So would a whistle on your front bumper really have any effect? Well, we tracked down a professor who a decade ago did an extensive study of these whistles and on whether deer could really hear them at all.
and we ran them through a test track that we had where we were able to record from the point of view of a deer.
Dr. Pete Schaffel studies animal hearing here at the University of Cincinnati. He co-authored this study testing 6 deer whistles. The good news, he says deer can hear the whistles. The bad news, your car may hit the deer first.
The amount of road that the car is covering per second, by the time the signal actually would have reached the deer, the car would have been close enough probably to strike the deer.
No university study has ever proven that whistles prevent deer accidents. Bob McHugh, though, says it can't hurt.
Oh, I'm willing to give it a try.
Now, newer whistles are battery powered. They claim to be louder. However, many municipalities, including the city of Cincinnati, do not install whistles on their cars. The Cincinnati Park Board tells me tonight they have no evidence the whistles work, and they don't want to give their employees a false sense of security.
A lot about them this time of year. Deer just coming out of nowhere, jumping right in front of your car and causing an accident.
Yeah, well, Jenna James joins us now with 6 strategies of what to do if you ever encounter a deer. Jenna, good morning.
Good morning, Dave and Cerise. If you guys have ever seen a deer on the road, that you know that often there is really no time to react, and sometimes there's just going to be a collision, that it's going to be inevitable. But the guys at State Farm have these suggestions to try to avoid it as much as possible. So first, slow down if you see a deer. Do not try to outrun it if it's on the side of the road. You're much better letting it cross. Also, make sure you're always wearing your seatbelt. That doesn't just go if you see a deer. That is every time you get into a car. Then, if you're driving at night, turn on your high beams. So that way you can really illuminate the road and see as much as possible. But as soon as you see a deer, I'm told you're going to want to switch to your low beams. That way you don't blind the animal and it will have a chance to move out of the way. Plus, while you're out, you're going to want to scan the road. If you see one deer, remember, there could be others, or that one deer could cause a chain reaction. Plus, drive defensively. Remember that you're more than likely to see deer around the time of dusk and at dawn, so be very careful during those times. And
deer are everywhere this time of the year. In fact, in the last 20 years or so, get this, the deer population in North Carolina has increased from 10,000 20 years ago to over 1 million now. That spells trouble on the roads. I spoke with Allied Insurance owner Christopher Cook about what we need from an insurance standpoint if you do hit a deer.
Sure. So in our state, it's required that you have liability insurance on your automobile. It's optional to have coverage for damage to your car. And that comes in 2 primary coverage types. One is called comprehensive. In layman's terms, we call that acts of nature or acts of God. Things like hitting an animal, flood damage, hail damage, cracked windshield goes in that category. So that's comprehensive coverage. And then there's collision. You collided with something. You were driving and you wrecked. Now, well, Christopher, I hit a deer. I was driving and I wrecked. Yes, but it was an animal. It's an act of nature. You need to have comprehensive to cover hitting an animal.
But avoiding a deer altogether, that actually can be difficult. Cook says it's as hard as it is to hear. Sometimes you may just have to hit the animal.
Animals move a little bit more dawn and dusk. So, you know, when it's kind of not real bright outside, early in the morning, later in the evening, that's the most prone time. And then, Eric, I hate saying this, but the thing that's just awful to say, but it's true as far as your car insurance goes, hit the deer. Hold on, 10 and 2, press your brakes, but stay straight. Do not swerve and hit the guardrail or swerve and run off the road and risk your life.
As deer season approaches, it's important that drivers stay cautious on the roadways. Deer will be traveling from dawn till dusk. Drivers should stay focused on the road and keep seatbelts fastened. If a deer pops up in the middle of the road, officers say it's actually safer to brake rather than swerving.
If you do see a deer that's all of a sudden darts out in the middle of the roadway, go ahead, brake really hard, keep your hands on the steering wheel, do not veer off the roadway. You can do more damage to your vehicle and also cause yourself more personal injury by running into a telephone pole or a car, or excuse me, a tree that's not going to move for you.
Also, if someone hits a deer, they're advised to pull over and call 911.
Well, today, Terre Haute Mayor Duke Bennett made
with less hours of daylight as we head into the winter months, many North Country drivers may find themselves driving in the dark as they commute to and from work or school. But with that poses many risks for running into animals on the roads. This is especially true in areas with high deer populations.